I want to go to our Jeremy Diamond, who's standing by in Jaffa in Israel, our CNN military analyst Cedric Layton, and our global affairs correspondent Matthew Chance. Jeremy, let me go to you first, because we do have the statement from the IDF basically saying they are responsible. They carried out what they called a targeted strike. They were attacking, I think, a number. Targeted strike in Beirut on a commander responsible for the murder of the children in I-sr-ael. But it says at the moment there are no changes in the home front command defensive guidelines. What does that mean, Jeremy?
Well, effectively, the home front guidelines are the guidelines issued to civilians in Israel to tell them effectively what the risk level is at this moment in terms of military action. It's to tell them whether to cancel large gatherings, to not go to school, to be within reach of a bomb shelter at all times. And in this case, the Israeli military has decided not to make any changes to those guidelines, which indicates, at least for the moment, that they don't anticipate that this will immediately escalate any further than it already has. But make no mistake, that possibility is certainly in the air tonight, as we have seen this very significant Israeli strike hit the southern suburbs of the Lebanese capital, Dahiyeh, which is notable in and of itself for the location, given its proximity to Beirut. But also, in addition to that, it is the fact that they are targeting a senior commander in that area. They say that this commander, who they have not named in this statement, it was responsible for this rocket attack that killed 12 children in the Israel-controlled Golan Heights in the Syrian Druze community of Majdal Shams. It has been clear since this weekend, when that rocket attack took place, when we saw the number of civilians killed, the fact that these were all children who were killed as well, it became immediately clear that there was a possibility of escalation. And since then, we have heard clear statements from Israeli officials vowing that there would be a severe response, vowing that Hezbollah would have a price to pay, even as Hezbollah, of course, denied responsibility for this attack. And so now we have finally seen what shape that response has taken, as the Israeli military, in just the last a couple of hours, carried out this strike and then very quickly confirmed it, making clear that they wanted to send a message that, as the Israeli defense minister says tonight, a red line was crossed by Hezbollah in this rocket attack over the weekend, and an Israeli response was merited.
Thanks very much, Jeremy Diamond. Let's go to Cedric Layton, who is with us. And Cedric, I think it's fair to say that many were expecting a response, all expecting some sort of retaliation for the Golan Heights attack. What do you make of what we are learning this South, the IDF saying it was a targeted strike?
Guys, I think that is really the key thing here. And if it turns out to be true that this was a drone strike instead of a strike with a manned aircraft, that also goes to show that the Israelis were looking for a very precise action. They wanted to do this with a minimum of collateral damage, and that is, I think, commensurate with some of the pressure that the Israelis have probably received from the U.S. as well as other Western nations to minimize civilian casualties in any type of response that they would make. I think everybody expected them to make this kind of an effort, this kind of a response in response to what happened at Majdal Shams. But the other thing that they had to consider was the fact that they needed to also minimize the possibility of civilian casualties.
Yeah, and look, this is a very dangerous moment, right? This is not a war zone. This is happening, as we showed our viewers, streets of Beirut, and that is absolutely terrifying. We've heard in the last few minutes from the Lebanese state media that the strike was conducted by drone that fired 3 missiles. If we play the video that we played at the top of the show, I'm just going to ask my producer to play that out. From what we see in this video, once we play it out, Cedric, I wonder whether you could tell us in terms of the impact. We're hearing 1 casualty here. What more can you dissect from the video that we have seen so far? The images, here we go, it's playing right now.
Right. So when you look at the destruction in the street, this is commensurate with a fairly low-powered explosive, something that on the order of perhaps a 250-pound bomb or less. And I say or less with emphasis in this case because there would be far greater destruction to the buildings if a standard bomb would have been used in this particular case, Isa. And so you see, some of the, obviously there's building debris in the middle of the street there. Some windows appear to have blown out, and there does seem to be a case where they looked at a very specific location within a building to go after a very specific individual target. So that's what it looks like to me at the present time, and I see these are live pictures right now, and it does seem as if they're basically in a mopping up operation, but they don't expect any secondary or tertiary attacks after this one. At least that's what it looks like right now.
Secretary, do stay with us. Let me go to our Matthew Chance. And Matthew, we are in unknown territory. Yes, Israel's claimed responsibility, as we heard from our Jeremy Diamond there. But Hezbollah had said previously, Matthew, they would meet escalation with escalation, right? Speak to the significance of this moment and the fear, of course, that this could widen out a wider conflict.
Yeah, Isa, I think the question here is this the start of a broader Israeli campaign in southern Lebanon, or will it provoke a broader campaign in southern Lebanon, or is it just a very limited action that was undertaken in response to those dreadful killings in Majd al-Shams in the Golan Heights at the weekend, in which those 12 children, teenagers as well, were killed, and the whole region is on a knife edge, trying to grapple with that question. I can certainly tell you, and I've been up to northern Israel several times since the October 7th attacks, there's a great deal of political pressure inside Israel, and in northern Israel particularly, to strike at Hezbollah, to push that group back from the northern border of Israel. Northern Israel is under constant, not just a constant threat of missile attack, but actually under constant missile attack as well. And it's led to whole communities being evacuated. They're not able to go back into their homes. They're fearful that what happened from Gaza in southern Israel could happen to them in northern Israel as well. So there's an enormous amount of political pressure the government of Benjamin Netanyahu is feeling to strike at Hezbollah. But that has to be balanced with the fact that Israel is exhausted. It is already engaged in a bitter conflict in the south of the country, inside Gaza, and just doesn't have the energy, potentially. It may have the means, but it doesn't necessarily have the energy and the political will to go full on into Lebanon right now. Now, whether it escalates into something else that has a momentum of its own, we will see. But that is the issue we're confronted with tonight. Yeah, indeed. The concern is, how does Hezbollah retaliate, if it indeed does retaliate to this, as we have seen tit for tat before. Let me go to our Ben Wiedemann, who is in Beirut for us. Ben, just give us a sense of what you are learning. We're looking at these images out of Beirut. Streets are packed. You see an ambulance. We've seen some of the first scenes. What are you learning from authorities there, and importantly, about casualties at this stage?
Well, this strike happened just before 8 o'clock in the evening local time. This is a time when the streets are crowded with people, and the neighborhood where it happened, Harat Harek, in the southern part of Beirut, is a very crowded, populous neighborhood. Now, that is where many of Hezbollah's leaders operate out of, but that's also where hundreds of thousands of civilians live as well. Now, we're hearing from the national news agency, the official Lebanese news agency, that at least one woman was killed and several others injured. There are reports in the local media that hospitals in the area are calling for donations of blood as well. Also, I'm hearing that people are lining up, queuing up at petrol stations to fill, because this is an event that, although it comes as a surprise in terms of the time and the place, the fact that it happened was no surprise at all, because it was widely expected that there would be some sort of Israeli response to the attack on Majd al-Shams in the Israeli-occupied Syrian Golan Heights that left 12 people dead. But the other day I was speaking with the foreign minister of Lebanon, who told me that the Lebanese government had received assurances through diplomatic channels that Beirut, the Beirut airport, and specifically the southern suburbs of Beirut, would not be struck. That was their interpretation of those assurances. So clearly those assurances don't amount to much at this point. Now, we know that Secretary General of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, has said time and time again that striking Beirut is crossing a red line. However, on the 2nd of January of this year, Israel did launch a strike that killed a senior Hamas leader, also roughly in that area as well. So we'll have to simply wait and see how Hezbollah is going to respond. But I know that organization well. They are not going to go quietly into the night. There will be some sort of response from Hezbollah. They have said they will meet escalation with escalation.